Remix: Making Art and Commerce Thrive in a Hybrid Economy is a book published in 2008 by law professor and activist Lawrence Lessig, which painted a picture of the copyright wars that by proxy criminalised an entire generation. Lessig argues current copyright law is obsolete with the availability and accessibility of remix technologies via digital media, as in to say, if copyright regulates copies, and copying is as common as breathing, then a law that triggers federal regulation on copying is a law that regulates too far. In his book, Lessig interviews remix artist Gallagher, who comments, "We're living in this remix culture, this appropriation time where any grade school kid has a copy of Photoshop and can download a picture of George Bush and manipulate his face how they want, and send it to their friends. And that's just what they do." These acts of cultural conversation via the remixing of media is commonly framed as a free speech issue, while its critics sub the practice stealing at worst and appropriation at best. As technology outpaces our law, little has changed in regards to Lessig's doomsayings, which, if he is to be believed, is a cause of concern. This is why I'm going to be walking through the remix phenomenon and the ethical implications it presents, as well as exploring various other topics that have developed into what is now known as remix studies. TLDR, I'm taking the meme seriously.
Try here. Stop. What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
Now. You're looking at now, sir. Everything that happens now is happening now.
What happened to then?
We passed then.
When?
Just now. We're at now.
Go back to then.
When?
Now.
Now?
Now.
I can't.
Why?
We missed it.
When?
Just now.
When will then be now? Soon. How soon?
A remix is when someone takes two or more pieces of media and edits or rearranges them into something new. It's important to note that a remix can constitute the use of any form of media, or more broadly, any cultural material. The exchange of cooking recipes throughout oral culture is a common example of the remix concept historically, as recipes can be adapted over many generations and cultures. The same can be said for folklore for the same reasons. Going back to our pal Lessig, who describes two kinds of cultures. Firstly, a read-only culture, one that absorbs media rather passively, provided to the consumer by a professional source, who is in full control of the conventions of the product. This kind of culture, Lessig argues, is a culture less practiced in performance or amateur creativity, and more comfortable, think couch, with simple consumption. This has been described as popular culture, one in which we consume duplications of culture or recordings and receive a static experience to be revisited. Secondly, there is read-write culture, more commonly known as remix culture. Remix culture, in the modern sense, is a global creative exchange of information made possible through digital technology and the practice of cut, copy and paste. Or put more simply, a culture actively participating in the remix practice. Cultural convergence is a term coined by media scholar Henry Jenkins.
Convergence culture is a world where every story, every sound, brand, image, relationship plays itself out across the maximum number of media channels. It's shaped as much by the decisions made in teenagers' bedrooms as it is by the decisions made in the Viacom boardroom. So a discussion list online or a Wikipedia function according to collective intelligence, where the group as a whole can put together knowledge in a more complex way than any individual member is capable of doing.
The relationship between popular culture and remix culture results in the birth of communities of practice, typically bonded by the content being appropriated and its relevant trends. For example, what started as a simple 10-second clip from Season 7 Episode 20 of The Simpsons, Bart on the Road, featuring a sample from the track Resonance by chillwave artist Home, was gradually circulated and appropriated until YouTube user Lucian Hughes popularised the concept, accompanying music and iconography from another remix genre, Vaporwave. Looking at the assortment of the remix materials and trends, a common theme develops that popular culture, or at the very least recognised culture, is a mandatory aspect of the remix. We have countless examples of the domains of remix culture since time immemorial. This leads us to conclude that remix culture cannot be exclusive to digital culture. Rather, its effects have become more apparent and applicable. The question then is, if the act of remix is a mainstay of cultural development, how do we regulate the use of popular culture or copyrighted material fairly, as to attain an acceptable balance between the individual and cultural benefits?
The pirates are out to get you. Don't let them brand you with their mark. Piracy funds organised crime and will destroy our film and video industry. Piracy costs jobs and will destroy our music and publishing industry. Piracy funds terrorism and will destroy our development and your future enjoyment. Don't touch the hot stuff. Cool is copyright. Copyright is a matter of...
Hey, stop! Why? I just don't get it. I always catch you fuckers watching this sick shit. This is sickening.
There's a common argument for fair use, or fair dealings when appropriating others' work. If copyright is seen as a set of restrictions, fair use can then be seen as a set of exceptions that are a fundamental part of the copyright bargain. There is no strict definition of fair use. Instead, appropriated works are considered on a case-by-case basis by a combined set of criteria. How the appropriated work is used, the main factor being if the work is transformative, meaning broadly saying something new or different with the copyrighted material. The nature of the copyright material used, fiction, non-fiction, creative, factual. The use of non-fiction or factual works will more likely fall under fair use. Whether the amount of copyrighted material used is reasonable in relation to the purpose of the appropriated work. And finally, whether the appropriated work will impact the market for the copyrighted work, and if so, in what way. The implementation of fair use is fundamentally grounded in the philosophy of free speech, rooted in academia and journalism in response to the innovation of the printing press. A new self-conception in dealing with texts arose from the discernible naming of authors, printers, page numbers, and publishing years. Hence, texts could be clearly referenced, which in turn served as the basis for creating knowledge through critical review and supplementation of information. These interweaving processes of combining existing and new material became a major principle and coercive element in scientific argumentation. This application of fair use on creative works, opposed to the factual academic works it was tailored for, bring to light the shortcomings of the broad criteria, as depending on your interpretation of fair use, it can be applied restrictively or liberally due to the focus on the transformative quality. This issue of creating free speech to fair use has been detrimental to copyright laws, argues Harvard law professor Rebecca Tushnet. Tushnet argues using fair use and free speech as interchangeable concepts thus has a profound and negative narrowing effect on the scope of fair use, and in turn threatens First Amendment freedoms because non-critical uses of copyright works have substantial value to society and to freedom of speech. The notion that fair use can be used to curb positive speech is a profound thought. It's hard not to draw comparisons to the celebratory nature of various remix practices, such as anime music videos and its history of translation, that have a long, valued and controversial past in the remix communities. Dr. Margie Borsk offers an alternative perspective on how we should assess the remix concept. Remix is a fuzzy metaphor, one that is used to defend new modes of participatory digital media engagement, while simultaneously denying agency to users of the recent past. If we want to understand the role copies play in contemporary composition, we would do better to think not of their meaning, but of their use. This idea of identifying the cultural significance of appropriation with how the culture uses appropriated works is a far cry from the free culture proposed by Lessig, as it's the cultural response to the act of appropriation, not the meaning of the appropriated work, that is up for validation. This approach could effectively legitimise both critical appropriation and celebratory appropriation in conjunction with the fair use application. While many scholars can agree that the issues surrounding remix culture needs to be addressed, there's still much discussion about remix culture's place in society and the effect it has on our attitudes towards authorship, representation and expression. The bitter pill to swallow is we simply haven't had the debate long enough, and the imminent catastrophe has not prompted a hard cultural shift as of yet. The story of Goldilocks and Three Bears come to mind, in that too much hot liberal chaos and the author dies at the behest of the audience, too much cold conservative tyranny and the audience rebels against the author. We need to find a compromise. We tried too hot, now we're trying too cold. It's time to get it just right, and get the fuck out before the damn bears come back.